around, don't disregard it. Sweep you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started, it's the hardest. Talk around, don't disregard it. Sweep you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. Yeah,
get your boots ready. We're about to go on a trip where we wrestle, nobody settling or calling it quits. You're here for the grit, betcha this stuff is amazing. You're stumbling, welcome to the bump in the apron. Step into it, the hardest part of the ring. Here to bring fun, yeah, and this art he is king. It's the best thing, making sure you don't tap out. Don't go soft with the hardest podcast out. And it's not just another one, it's clear. Off the rest, in this content, none contest. Take the nonsense off the steps. You know it's nothing but pure gems when it's coming off the chest. Get it? Now it's time to sit and relax. Get your mind blown away, ain't no skipping this track. Have you paying more attention, no listening gap. Get everything I ever wanted, no giving it back.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Apron Bump Podcast. I'm your host, the hardest part of the ring, known in some circles as Asian Kyle. Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you. I don't know why my camera's like...
Someone is at the front door.
Who's at the front door? Shit is that? I'll be right back.
A few moments later.
Some random ass dude wants to clean my gutters? Is that a thing? Is that what we're doing? Fucking rings the door, is like, hey, I'm gonna clean your gutters. Like, do our gutters look that bad? Probably. We got these goddamn not to delay the TNA talk, but let's talk about pine trees for a second. The fauna, the flora and the fauna, really, in Virginia is something to see. We got these goddamn trees. I'm not going to turn my camera around because it's a whole thing. You'll see my dildos and my butt plugs. But there are these gargantuan pine trees that are as old as Ric Flair almost. And there's just pine needles all over. Our front yard is covered in them. Okay? The roof, the crevices within the roof, we just cleaned them a few weeks ago. And now it feels like the pine cone monster just made all sorts of cummies all over our roof. It's a constant. We bought this house a couple months ago, and now we know that's going to be the bane of our existence, to the point where random old men offer to clean our gutters for us. But that's where we're at here on the Apron Bump Podcast. But where are we? I guess that's the sacrifice in owning a home. But speaking of which... Well, TNA Sacrifice 2006 is what we're here to cover, not pine trees. Although if you want me to do that in more long form, throw me an email at my personal email, pickledsphincter@aol.com. But no. TNA Sacrifice 2006. We're here to talk about, which is, pretty topical nowadays with the debut of Jeff Jarrett in AEW. Among others like Jay Lethal and Sanjay Dutt. Seems like AEW is slowly turning into 2006 TNA, so no better time to jump on the bandwagon. And speaking of which, if you like this era of TNA and you would like to hear more about it, well, I suggest you go to apronbump.com. You can go to the episodes tab. I cover lots of promotions, lots of eras of wrestling on this podcast, but TNA is one of my favorites. So you can go to the episodes tab at the top of apronbump.com and you can select TNA, and that'll filter it to all of the TNA reviews I've done thus far. Started from their first proper 3-hour pay-per-view, Victory Road 2004. And I've worked my way chronologically up until now, TNA Sacrifice 2006. So lots of chicanery and tomfoolery all throughout the show. We got the World X Cup underway here, so a lot of international flavor on this show. We got Samoa Joe dipping his toes into the main event scene. We got more Jarrett and Sting shenanigans. Team Canada seems like they're developing an exit strategy of the faction. You're seeing a lot of, well, I'll put it this way. A1 and Bobby Roode both have singles matches, which seemed to be a kind of a litmus test for both guys. And we know that one of them became something, and one of them is the second most known A1 that there is. So, behind the steak sauce. So, there's some hits, there's some misses on this show. Weirdly, because 2006 is a really good year for TNA, this one feels like an outlier. And we get into the reasons why. Even the main event, Christian versus Abyss and Full Metal Mayhem. We got the New Age Outlaws versus the Dudleys. There's a lot of weird stuff on this show. The build to it's very weird as well. But it's an interesting time talking about it, that's for sure. And who am I talking about it with? Well, none other than Kyle from the Smacked Raw podcast, returning to the show. You might have heard him on my Backlash 2002 review a few months ago. Always a good time with Kyle. I've been fortunate enough to come on his show a few times with various hosts in various formats. Always a good time. Check out the Smacked Raw podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, on YouTube and live on Twitch as well. They have a whole cast of characters over there. Kyle and RN do the weekly rewind, which is typically either Sunday or Monday nights, where they hit the major bullet points of the news and the major things happening in wrestling in current day. You also got Will Gray from Botch Spots and Chair Shots as a part of the Smacked Raw crew. He does a lot of interviews and more retro stuff. You also got Ted the Hillbilly Heel. All these people, by the way, have been on the Apron Bump podcast. Ted does a lot of retro stuff as well and puts his own spin on heels and wrestling. So, and a bunch of other, variety shows, all related to wrestling they do on the Smacked Raw channel. So go follow them on all social media so you know when things are happening. Like I said, all audio platforms, YouTube, YouJizz, all of those things. So do that. All the info in the description. While you're there, rate this podcast. Why don't you give it a review, even if it's just a thumbs up. A thumb with a donut next to it that represents, a thumb in the old rectum there. Just say good things about me. I know I have a tiny pecker, but would greatly appreciate it. Helps out. If you're watching on YouTube, give the video a like, subscribe if you're not already, leave a comment. About, I don't know, leave Creed lyrics in the comments if you want. Does Creed sing Sacrifice? Let me look that up here before I talk out of my asshole here. Sacrifice. Well, how's it go? My sacrifice. Yeah, it is Creed. With you, with me, I'm free. Yeah, that's Creed. Why are you still here? Listen to the episode, why don't you? TNA Sacrifice 2006 with myself and Kyle from the Smacked Raw podcast. How's life going, man? How's your day going?
Dude, it's good. Just sat down. I didn't realize how long I would put off watching Sacrifice, and
I just watched it last night too, so
okay,
no worries. I mean, was it worth the wait?
No.
You really had to sacrifice your time to watch it.
Oh man, hey, listen, as forgettable of a show it was, it's probably a good thing I just wrapped immediately before we started shooting. Because I promise you, this thing's going to be erased from my brain in probably 4 hours.
Brother, if I didn't take notes, I couldn't tell you anything that happened on this show.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did take some notes.
Yeah, man. So I guess first of all, did you watch TNA at all back in the day?
No.
Not at all. Is this your first ever show you've watched?
From beginning to end, very possibly. I don't know if I've ever sat down and watched an entire TNA or Impact. No, actually, I watched what? Impact Slammiversary like a year or two ago. They started getting some really good hype around them. Other than that, yeah, this is and especially this era of wrestling, this is the first full TNA show I've watched.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, today's Impact is very different than what it was back here in the mid 2000s. But yeah, this show I feel like doesn't represent this era because 2006 especially, like all the shows are hits or most of them. I guess. I mean,
really,
the roster. I mean, the roster they have is insane. I think this show suffered for a few reasons. One, the X Division is like TNA's bread and butter at this point, and I feel like it was neutered in a couple different ways, which I guess we'll touch on later. Also, the main story is Jarrett versus Sting, which is fine, but this started in like January and it culminates in October. So we're like, it's just like almost like they're stalling to just have a one-on-one match with these guys. So they're doing all these wacky shit, which again, we'll talk about that and like how that tag match later in the show is built up. But then you have some weird matches throughout the show. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, any other like overall thoughts before we dive into it?
So I guess playing on the set, like my first impression of the show was picking up on who's still currently wrestling. So what's in the main advertisement, saw Sting, Samoa Joe, Christian, AJ Styles, Daddy Ass,
hell yeah,
Christopher Daniels, Bubba Ray. Bubba just started wrestling again, right? He just went back to Impact.
Yeah, he's for some reason.
So that was a cool thing that stuck out to me. So I had like some ties to this product that I never got into or watched. I've heard so much about. And then the set, I was a huge fan of the set. And I feel like you can see a lot of where AEW drew some of their influence for their production and design choice.
The separate tunnels.
Yeah. Did the tunnels start with TNA or did TNA get their tunnel idea from another obscure company?
I'm sure other companies have done it before, but TNA is the first place I saw it. But it makes sense too, right? That was always like a thing. It's like a whatever thing. You can kind of brush it to the side. But like with WWE, you have like mortal enemies are about to fight each other, but they're coming from the same place. So they're both theoretically in guerrillas. Like, why aren't they destroying each other
in the same waiting room? Yeah, exactly.
So I do like that conceptually. And the arena itself, while it's not huge, I'm a fan of it, I guess. It's very like synonymous with TNA, and it ultimately establishes their identity for better or worse. So
yeah, so that initially stuck out to me, and the overall, like I said, the overall first impression of the show was a positive one. I was like, okay, this feels kind of relatable, and like I said, I tied it to like what my favorite show is currently is AEW Dynamite, and I was able to draw some ties there, and that initially got me into the door with this show.
Right. Yeah. Definitely AEW has pulled a lot from TNA, and even I would say WWE has pulled a good deal. You know, directly, indirectly.
At least their roster.
Yeah, I was about to say, they literally.
I'm about to say, if anything, they got their roster from them.
Well, it was the other way around too for a while, which we're just getting into that era where everybody starts jumping over. We've already seen Christian and the Dudleys, and then it just.
I was wondering about that. Is like, where does the like, because I've always picked up on TNA like bits and pieces through the eras. Where is this into relation to? TNA is just nothing but washed up WWE talent, Hogan, and Dixie Carter era.
So I would say this is like the perfect balance, like this era right here, mid 2006, because so we have Christian, the Dudleys, and Scott Steiner too, but you know it's not too heavy on the WWE. New Age Outlaws too, but they kind of start fading away a little bit after this show. But you still got guys like AJ. Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe, that are in the main, and Abyss, who's in the main event of this show. You have a lot of, you know, quote unquote TNA homegrown guys there as well. So I would say this is a good era in terms of like balance between homegrown and just pulling guys from WWE. But then Kurt Angle comes in October or September or whatever it is, in a few months after this show, which is good. The stuff Kurt does is good, but then it starts getting, you know, with Booker T and Mick Foley and countless other guys, and then you have the Bischoffs and the Hogans, and they lose two sides of the ring, and then it kind of goes downhill from there. But yeah, man. So I guess you're coming into this kind of cold. Did the 6-sided ring trip you up at all watching this?
Well, I'm plenty familiar with they use the 6-sided ring, and I've seen other matches in the past. So that felt like the TNA I was expecting. It would have been actually more off to me if this was them using the 4-sided ring.
Yeah.
Because I've seen way more highlights in stuff about TNA, which includes the 6-sided ring, than I have with the 4-sided.
Yeah, that makes sense. What'd you think of the intro package to this show? The first thing that plays, or if you watched it or if you skipped over it?
I skimmed it. I think what I was doing at the time, I was kind of multitasking. I was in bit and trying to promote some stuff here and do some work on my computer.
Yeah.
What initially caught me was how many wrestlers it featured that are currently wrestling. That was the main thing that caught me. From a production standpoint, only one video package was kind of note to me, and that was actually the video package for Christian in Abyss.
Yeah.
Like I loved that video package. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, it was very unique because it had like the piano. It was just like piano music.
The eerie piano. It reminded me of like essentially similar horror elements that Resident Evil, like one of my favorite video game franchises,
right,
would do in some of their older games. They used that piano overlay or background music to create that eerie atmosphere.
Right.
And, I was a huge fan.
Yeah, because this is a time period, like even WWE, it was very common to just have like whatever the pay-per-view theme song is over, just clips and highlights, which was basically that, but just they changed the music, and it was just like one change, but it made it, like you said, gave it that eerie feeling. And yeah, TNA and their production was pretty good. Like the intro package, the only reason I bring it up is because they're always so well done. You have the guy who talks like this in the beginning, and they always like tie the pay-per-view name to the whatever it is. Like, there's no great reward without sacrifice. It's like really corny, but it's always
like I said, I hate that I was running so late with watching the show that my attention was kind of between that and the stuff I was doing on my PC. But it struck me as good. I didn't really take notes on that as
How
much
dare
as I
you.
did that
you
opening match.
should have
sorry.
in-depth notes on each video package. You should know this, White Kyle.
White Kyle. Jesus, let's not make that name stick, bro. Let's go.
I mean, I can make it the names underneath the video if that's what you want.
No,
we'll
thank
see.
you, man.
We'll see how this goes.
Asian Kyle is yours.
Well,
Just realized where's Asian Kyle coming from?
Well, I'm Asian and I'm Kyle.
Are you?
I'm a quarter Filipino.
I would say Filipino was like the closest impression, but you don't look enough of it that I would just guess you're Filipino.
Well, if you would see my cock, you would know for sure. So speaking of tiny penises, we got an opening match here. Actually, Petey Williams is probably pretty big. So it's the World X Cup, and So did you grasp what the World X Cup was based on this show? Like how well did they explain it?
It took like half of the entire event before I could grasp it. I didn't even catch the name until their gauntlet match, which was a fucking Royal Rumble. So I was super confused once I saw people entering that. But no, I grasped it. It just seemed like they took wrestlers from. I'm assuming they're not all signed with TNA.
Right.
And they took what we had. You had America, Canada, Japan, and who was the fourth country
Mexico.
that was represented?
Mexico.
Yeah. And the only people of note in there was like Jushin Thunder Liger and Jay Lethal. I mean, I found out who a couple of the people were,
right?
But those were like the only two names that like I really latched onto, that I personally knew who they were. I know who Petey Williams is. I know that, but
you don't know who A1 is?
No.
Well, actually, I don't even know if he's in the gauntlet. He's in a later match though, but we'll get into that. But
he was in the later match. I caught.
Unfortunately, he was. But the World X Cup, like you said, it's those 4 countries. And it's been playing out on Impact. So the way they do it is there's 2 tag team matches, between the 4 teams. Not every team faces each other in each round, but there's 2 tag team matches, and each winning team gets 2 points. And then the next round, there's 2 singles matches, and the winners of that gets 3 points apiece. And then the gauntlet later in the show, whoever wins that, they get 5 points for their team, and the runner-up gets 2 points. So it's fine in concept. I almost think
they treated it dirty, though.
Yeah,
they really did.
Why do you say
did
that?
It so dirty. With Kevin Nash later in the night.
Oh yeah, yeah,
dude. They just he just took like a steaming dump on the entire division.
I think that for that and a few other reasons, I wish they would have made it more sports centered, kind of like the Cruiserweight Classic, where there wasn't really storyline elements. It was just like a showcase. And I think they tried to, every team outside of USA was a heel, which was because they're dirty and they're foreign, and I get fuck them, I guess. So, but in this opening match, you have Team Canada versus Team Japan. So you have Petey Williams versus Jushin Thunder Liger. Which is that, so Liger is a heel here, which I'm not too familiar with Liger.
He was heel
in this match. I think that was the idea. He was wearing black. He was like Venom Liger. He was wearing black and white. He and the finish was a very heel finish too. So, the match itself. It was not a lot to it. You see Petey Williams versus Liger. You're like, wow, this is gonna be a on fire match. But it was just it was okay. Like I said, Liger out here in the black and white, which was interesting. You got Petey Williams going for the original, one of the original Canadian Destroyers, but is unable to hit it during this match. Liger at one point hits the Liger bomb, but only for a 2 counts. And then Petey fights back, hits a spinning neck breaker, and goes for another Canadian Destroyer. But Minoru, who is another member of Team Japan, he gets on the apron to distract Petey and the ref. And then Hiroki Goto, who is a current New Japan member, he gets in the ring, hits Petey with a low blow, and then Liger hits Petey with a back suplex face buster of sorts, and gets the win. So Japan gets the win here, and they drape the Japanese flag on Petey. And like I said, I think there's just too much I'm the evil villain from the foreign country deal here. So
even with all that, I couldn't boo Liger. I was still just there's Liger. And they announced on the broadcast at this point, he had already been wrestling for over 20 years.
Crazy.
I honestly it's, and maybe because, like I said, my attention may have still been a little bit split up during this match. I couldn't really put heel to face dynamic. I kind of caught on to what you were saying. It should have been more towards the sports orientated aspect. And although it was kind of a heel, the heel finish, when I see Team Canada, I think heels anyway. So I'm who cares? I guess the heels are getting their comeuppance, and it never even crossed my mind that Liger was a heel.
I saw the black and white, and I was like, maybe he's a heel, but that wasn't at the forefront of my mind throughout the match. But with the low blow finish, I was like, oh, I guess he's a heel. So and not an incredibly long match either. It was an opening match, nothing to get you too nothing too crazy. I guess just to warm up the crowd a bit, but I guess it served up that purpose, if anything else. But after that, we got Jeremy Borash backstage with America's Most Wanted, the team of Chris Harris and James Storm. Good shit, right?
Bro, what's this segment, man?
What happened? There was nothing. It was completely normal. I don't know what you're talking about.
Jackie. Poor Jackie. Dude, what got me was the this is when I was like, yeah, this is definitely a different era of pro wrestling, because this is very much more the not that we don't have zany characters, but it just a lot of things on the show felt a little extra zany. And I fell in love with Jackie watching this whole damn segment. I watched her cry, and I was like, yeah, dude, just watching her cry it up. And then for one, watching the open, the openly unabashed women abuse that was taking place during this was a little
just try to keep her in check. Nothing wrong with that.
It was a little startling.
Perhaps.
And then, but after all of that, when Jeremy Borash says, Jackie, what's going on? You've been crying for 4 weeks straight. And I was like, I was like, okay, so that has been the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I pieced it all together and I found it absolutely hilarious. And then just the over-the-top announcement that she's pregnant.
Yeah.
And then getting fired for being pregnant. Oh my God, dude. I loved it. Actually, I'm not going to lie. Like, thinking about it now, this little segment is one of the biggest highlights of the whole damn show for me. Like,
First of all, I didn't even think about it. I love the concept of you just diving into the segment with no context of the storyline.
Yes.
You have Jackie
Zero.
crying,
Zero.
her getting berated by the AMW, Gail Kim fight. Like, what is going on here? But this has just been a absolutely absurd story because, I mean, Jackie came in. I guess the the underlying story is that AMW, Jeff Jarrett, and a few other
who are
people,
America's Most Wanted? I didn't get a chance to really pick up who they were.
So it's Chris Harris and James Storm. So James Storm still wrestles.
James Storm is former Beer Money.
Yes.
With Robert Roode or Bobby Roode.
Yep. Chris Harris
and-
is mainly known for AMW in the grand scheme of
Okay,
things.
yeah, I'm not familiar with
He showed up in the ECW, WWE ECW as Braden Walker.
I wasn't even watching wrestling at that time. I don't think I was watching wrestling in 2000.
You weren't a big Braden Walker guy? Is that what you're telling me?
I can't say that I was, man.
Wow. 1 in a million, I guess.
Sorry, I never bought any of the T-shirts.
If he had a T-shirt, I'd be shocked. But yeah, but AMW, they were a really hot tag team for TNA in their early days. At this point, I think they're pretty close to breaking up. Maybe it's like a year from this point, but they were there pretty much from the inception of TNA. And the tag team division in TNA was always like one of their staples, especially like in 02 through like 05. Like they were like main event type guys, and they would face other various teams. And but at this point, they're kind of just a heel team. They're like henchmen at this point.
Okay.
But it's like a bigger faction that's headed by Jeff Jarrett, basically.
I was about to say, yeah, because I saw Gail Kim was in the tag match later, and so I
Right.
was wondering what exactly how she tied into like multiple wrestlers throughout the evening.
It's AMW, Jarrett, Abyss, I guess, is kind of a part of it. He's more of like a hired gun, maybe. Team Canada as well. So it's a bunch of guys.
Okay.
But Jackie came in. It was a few months ago, and she was basically pissed at Jarrett because I guess Jarrett chose Gail over her, and Jarrett was holding her down from joining TNA. It was something along those lines. It was very convoluted.
Bro, who's getting jealous over goddamn Jeff Jarrett? I don't, dude, this might just be a me thing. I've never understood the appeal of Jeff Jarrett in my life. I'm not, and here's the thing: is it's not like I hate the guy. I am almost 100% apathetic towards Jericho.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, excuse me, Jarrett. And I never got into it. Like the most I've ever gotten into Jarrett is like the last couple of years, like really, really old Jeff Jarrett
Right.
coming out as like a legend, as this archaic figure from times gone by, which I don't really understand how that makes sense because he's like, I don't think he ever left wrestling. I think
he's always kind of
stayed around.
tries to start promotions here and there, and joins the Bullet Club and then
jealous.
leaves. And
Who's getting jealous? Is he really like a love interest
So-
in 2006? Like,
I don't
seriously.
I don't think the idea is that they're romantically together. It's more of a business, but who knows?
Who knows?
But yeah, Jackie's pissed, and she doesn't like Gail Kim, and then there's this whole thing where because Alex Shelley, who's also a part of this group, and he has like his Shelley cam, so he's like the guy that videotapes everything. I guess he like
Is he kind of like backstage or more like Brandon Cutler?
more like Brandon Cutler. Yes,
Okay.
that's actually a funny comparison, but it's pretty true. I guess at some point, because Jackie had blackmail on Jarrett, so she was threatening to, ruin his life. So Jarrett got Shelly to go to her house and tape her having sex. And then, so they have this sex tape of Jackie, and they're like, "Hey, if you're gonna stay in our faction and you're gonna help us, or we're gonna release this to the public." So that's why Jackie's like, she doesn't want to be a part of this. That's why she's upset and she's crying. I didn't put it together that she was pregnant until they said it. I thought she was just crying because she was unhappy, but apparently
She's suffering some serious trauma on a week-to-week basis.
So ridiculous. And I think because I think the storyline just kind of peters out. I don't know if she's actually pregnant here. She very well may be, and maybe that's
They didn't touch her.
this may be their way
you know,
of writing
she never
her
got
off.
attacked or nothing, to my knowledge.
No, I don't even think she's ever been touched really in her short time here in TNA. But yeah, so that's a thing. That's a thing. Unfortunately. But after that, we have maybe the match of the night here, I would say. The tag team titles are on the line. We got the champions AMW versus the team of AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels. What do you think of this team of AJ and Daniels here?
So I was aware of their history, that they were huge rivals in early TNA, and that at some point they did team up. So I was aware of the obvious chemistry that they were going to have. I was very impressed. I was about like halfway through the match, and it was the first example of what is widely being accepted of how did TNA not see what they had with certain talents that they had on their roster.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt obvious to me with AJ Styles, you know, and I mean, obviously hindsight is so 2020. But I was like, okay, this is definitely one of those times when it's like, where that common criticism that TNA has and Impact has had is just how much it overlooked its huge depth of talent that it had, in favor of the aging WWE and
Right.
WCW wrestlers that came through. You know, and this was a prime example of that, because the whole time I was thinking, you know, I was like, damn, this match doesn't feel like a sophomore match on a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like this is the match I would have opened with. I would have totally flipped this with the opener between Liger and Petey Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it was hot, man. It was a fantastic tag match, even though I knew no context to it. It was my second favorite match of the evening.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a ton of, you know, storyline to this other than, like you said, AJ and Daniels. They had a pretty decently long rivalry in the previous year. They've come together. What kind of brought them together was their kind of three-way rivalry with Samoa Joe. And Joe was kind of like this outside force, and Styles and Daniels kind of had to gang up to, you know, take him down in a sense. But then, you know, Daniels and Styles, they see Jarrett and his whole faction taking over. And I think they're kind of playing to that, like the old WWE, WCW guys, like Jarrett and Steiner and those guys, they're taking over. So I guess they're kind of defending the sanctity of TNA in a sense. But yeah, I agree. I think this match opening would have been a good call, or maybe even later in the show. It doesn't feel like a second, like you said, it doesn't feel like a second match of the night. But yeah, it was hot, man. I mean, the AMW, they dominate a lot of the match until AJ gets the hot tag, and man, you have physical peak of AJ here is something to watch. All the spin kicks he was doing, the head scissors, the lariats.
The Pele while the guy was in the fireman's carry.
Yes, Daniels has him up.
They said that he missed it, but it looked like on my end, at least how the camera angle was, it looked like it connected.
Yeah.
And then they claimed that he missed it. And I was like, damn, he kind of ruined that for me, because it looked solid to me.
Yeah, could caught him right on the head, and then Daniels hits the Death Valley driver after that. You got a Tower of Doom spot, of course, but Daniels was on the top, and he holds on to the top rope, which is a little touch that I liked, and allowed him to hit a crossbody on a James Storm. You have a absolutely nuts, phenomenal forearm from the ring into the crowd onto Chris Harris. Just insane stuff. And some really good false finishes at the end. There are several times in this match where I was like, oh, that's it. But then it wasn't. You have, I think, Storm's in the middle of the ring. Daniels hits his best moonsault ever. And then AJ hits a splash right one after the other. And that was a 2 count. And then later, AJ goes for a Styles clash onto, I believe, Storm. Then he hits him with a low blow. And then Storm hits him with a super kick. Pins him. But then Daniels makes a save, like out of nowhere, like the way it was shot, like Daniels just comes out of frame. And a similar thing when Daniels hits the Angel's wings onto Storm, and then Harris comes and makes the save. So just the tag team element of this match, I thought everything was great. Everything was hitting. But it is TNA after all. So we have to have a ref bump. And another thing about this match is Gail Kim, who of course is with AMW, is banned from ringside, but she is not banned from the
rafters, apparently.
Which is that not ringside? Because you're still within the, I don't know.
You're in the same room. You would think ringside means the arena room where the ring is held, not just because then what would stop her from just being in the audience and just like lobbing a wrench into the ring? You know, where does ringside begin and end? We got
to consult the rule book on this one or update it. So yeah, Gail Kim drops a nightstick from the rafters into the ring, and both teams are kind of jockeying to get it. Daniels.
How great would it have been if they panned up and Sting was up there with her too? Like, what the fuck are you doing here? You know,
tosses her off. But then Daniels hits like a moonsault to Harris on the outside. And so they're both kind of taken out of the equation. And then on the inside of the ring, AJ hits the Styles Clash on the James Storm. But as Styles goes for the pin, Harris is in with that nightstick to the back of the head of AJ, which allows James Storm to cover him and get the win. So AMW retains in a really fun match for sure.
Yeah. And then this show dropped off.
What makes you say that? You don't think
So in my notes, I literally have it that the crowd went crazy for that forearm into the crowd.
Yes.
And then I didn't hear a peep from them until Samoa Joe and Sting's tag match. That in everything that happened between that move and the that tag match, the co-main event, at no point was the crowd noteworthy to me.
You don't think they were hot for this segment with Larry Zbyszko and A1 and Slick Johnson?
Who is fucking A1, bro? Like,
exactly. He is the most generic muscle dude. So it cuts to Larry Zbyszko's office, who he's like the general manager of TNA at this point.
Okay, is that his role?
It's not the title, but basically it's like the head of the council of whatever the hell. But A1's in his office with him, and there's this whole underlying story where Larry Zbyszko is at odds with Raven because Raven was pissed because Larry cost him the world title like a year ago. So they've been going at it, and Larry was, getting tired of Raven's shit, so he fired him. But then there's like a new head of TNA management that I guess brought Raven back. So now Larry has hired A1 as the guy to take out Raven. So Larry and A1 are in his office, I guess, discussing strategy or whatever. A1 is literally doing curls. He has full-on dumbbells in his office as Larry's talking. But he's not listening to Larry because he's a big, dumb gorilla. And A1 leaves, like, okay, he's literally here just to do some curls and then walk out. And then Slick Johnson comes in, one of the referees for TNA. And Slick Johnson tells Larry that we're going to find out who the new face of TNA management is at Slammiversary, because fuck this pay-per-view, I guess. And
yeah, right. Got to sell him. By the way, was this a pay-per-view or was this broadcast?
This was a pay-per-view, and it's hilarious that you can't tell it's a pay-per-view just based on how mid it is.
Well, not only that, it kept cutting to commercials.
Did you watch it on YouTube or Impact?
Yes. YouTube.
So I think it didn't cut to commercial. Did you actually have commercials, or did it just like fade out?
No, it faded out and faded in. Like there was commercials. It was cutting out of the broadcast.
So I think that's based on how it is on Impact Plus, because if you don't have like the premium version, you have ads on there. And I think on YouTube, they pull it from Impact Plus is what I'm guessing.
Okay, because that was confusing the shit out of me. I was
unless like, they like might have had commercials, and maybe they
was this just like a regular episode on weekly television? And they just, like I was so confused why it kept cutting out and back in like there was commercials throughout the entire evening.
I mean, I didn't watch this live, and they may very well have had commercials, and they just cropped them out. So who knows? But
who knows?
I can never tell with TNA. But Slick Johnson apparently knows who this new face of TNA management's going to be, and for whatever reason, Larry Zbyszko does not. So It was just a very tedious segment that was just hilariously like, why is
It's
this
not a
happening?
really good business model to be withholding dire information like that between your management team.
What is this motivation for not telling them? Like, who gives a shit? I think it ends up being Jim Cornette, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong, but I don't think that lasts too long anyways, so it's like, whatever. But man, we have you said that tag match was your favorite match, or your second favorite match of the night. I bet this one was your first. We got Raven.
Oh man, you got it.
Versus A1.
I didn't even watch this match. I took a phone call. I had the phone call. Like, okay, so you can't see this, but I have my TV mounted like right there. So it's this 50-inch. It's like only a couple feet from me. Huge television. It's in my face. A simple phone call was all it took to make this match completely wiped from my memory.
You're telling me A1, he's not a larger than life presence? He doesn't just come through the screen?
It wasn't until I got through the New Age Outlaws in 3D before I realized I had missed a match, and I had to rewind back so I could say I'm aware of who wrestled. So for one, has anybody in this evening aged worse over the last 15 years than Raven?
Brother, that's like, I don't have a lot of notes on this match because not a lot happened. The Raven's look here is atrocious because like 2 years before this, he looked young, he was handsome.
You know, when I was doing the slider on the YouTube and it's kind of like giving you little previews of where you've slid to, I thought it was Hurricane Helms wrestling.
The green hair was
the green hair, man.
The green hair made him look so old because you could tell how balding he was from the color of the hair, and then the attire. What were your thoughts on his what he was wearing in this match?
Dude, like I said, he looked like Hurricane Helms on like a quick glance. That's I think the most noteworthy thing about this match is how unnoteworthy it was. The biggest thing that stood out to me was there was a pull apart between Raven and Larry Zbyszko. That's how hot apparently this feud is. It calls for security, and all I could focus on was like, okay, find somebody you know in that security pile.
Yes.
And I found a Control Your Narrative CEO in EC3 in there. I thought I
really
saw. Yeah. It's one of the last frames of the security. I think he was holding back Zbyszko like in the crowd.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's clearly EC3. I thought I saw Ethan Page, but then it just turned out it was some other guy with like a douchebag goatee mustache combo. And plus, I think Ethan Page would have been like a at this point.
I was about to say, how old is Ethan Page? He's probably 11.
Yeah. But definitely saw EC3 though in the crowd.
Interesting.
100%.
Yeah. Probably the most noteworthy. That was probably the most noteworthy part of this whole deal, other than Raven's. He had this long, because like he always wrestles in a skirt in TNA, which is fine. But this version of it looked like a black trash bag that was wrapped around him, and it went all the way to his ankles. And then he had this awful shirt.
Really weird, man.
It was like an Affliction style shirt, and then with the green hair, he just looked awful and old. And
I feel like he was trying to combine like dated pop culture at that point. Like he was trying to combine like Korn and The Matrix, and just a whole bunch of other things. And it was just like a weird amalgamation of outdated pop culture, and it did not work.
Yeah, and A1, like I said, just a generic big man, nothing, just bear hugs and the belly to belly, like not even impressive moveset. He's doing this weird pose where he's like, it's almost like a Randy Orton thing. He keeps doing that over and over again, like it's a video game, and he's trying to spam it. Then the Raven effect for the win by Raven. That was actually a pretty sick looking DDT. A1's neck looked like it fucking broke on this, but otherwise, yeah, pretty much a nothing match here. The story, like you said, was kind of the pull apart at the end between Larry Zbyszko and Raven. But
of all people on your roster that you could facilitate a pull apart segment, you went with Larry Zbyszko.
Fucking 60-year-old Larry Zbyszko and his bowling shirt against Raven and his stupid green hair.
You could have just let him go. They would have petered out at 45 seconds.
Because Raven was gassed. A1 or Larry Zbyszko's old, so it would, like you said, it would have been like that Family Guy. I don't know if you've seen that, where it's like the two old guys fighting, and it's like in slow motion. It would have been that. It would have been
that, man. Yeah.
Man, the hits just
the
keep on
show,
coming.
man.
Hits keep on coming, man. We got Rhino versus Bobby Roode. So I watched this match. I watched like half the show one night and half the other night. I watched this match in bed. I fell asleep after the entrances, and I woke up right before the finish, and nothing made me want to go back and watch it. Did you happen to take a gander at it?
Dude, no. Like I said, it was just like the most noteworthy thing is how noteworthy everything really was. So the only real takeaway I got from this was WWE's Bobby Roode is better than TNA's Bobby Roode. However, TNA's Bobby Roode is better than WWE's Robert Roode. So this is like my second favorite.
My brain just turned into a
iteration.
pretzel there. I think I know what you're getting at though.
Yeah. Like NXT's Bobby Roode, way better than whatever TNA was putting out. But I would have taken this TNA version over the Robert Roode that we currently have.
So Bobby Roode, he's and that was kind of my one note on this is like it seems like Team Canada is about to disband, and they're kind of trying to establish an exit strategy. Like for A1, they're like, let's see if this guy can handle a singles match, and he couldn't. So that's why he never really announced it to much. Whereas this one, it was like, it still wasn't like a 5-star classic by any means, but it was competent. And Bobby Roode definitely has more of a star appeal than A1. So this is definitely setting up Bobby Roode to go on his singles run here. He even comes out in his robe because he would eventually have this like money, like Wall Street kind of character. He would change his name to Robert Roode, and he would become his own thing, like outside of Team Canada. And they're definitely setting that up here, and getting a win over Rhino, who is an established name. Roode hits the Northern Lariat after Scott D'Amore distracts Rhino and the ref. And otherwise not a lot going on here. But Robert Roode, he goes on to do some good stuff. I mean, we're only a year or two away from Beer Money. Has a decent little singles run before that, and then is world champion afterwards. So,
yeah, I mean, I think he peaked in NXT. But like I said, I'm not getting. I didn't get really any of any TNA.
I would say his later TNA run, which was in like 2012 or something. I think he still holds the record for longest world title reign in TNA. So he had a really good run there. I would say that was his peak, but NXT, it's a bigger stage, so you can argue that, but it was less of a duration. Like, you could argue either way, but I think his TNA run later in the 2000s was definitely his peak.
Okay.
But after that, we have Team 3D backstage with Jeremy Borash. And they let us know that there's 4 things of equal significance. 9/11, the OJ trial, George W. Bush getting elected, and the Dudley Boys winning their first ever tag team titles. Those are all of equal in the history of America or whatever. Those are all just as significant. So
how could you argue? How could you argue?
And this is all building to the next match, which is the James Gang, otherwise known as the New Age Outlaws, versus Team 3D, also known as the Dudleys. And I actually do like the story here because the Dudleys won their first ever WWE tag team titles by beating the New Age Outlaws. And I guess it was by the Dudleys used a steel pipe to win it. So that's the whole thing. So this basically they're looking for revenge here, or the game.
And I remember them mentioning that throughout it too, because I wasn't aware of that history. Right. And it was kind of neat. I like it. I say this on my show too. I like it when wrestling shows are willing to acknowledge other wrestling shows to help tie storylines into, because it's one of those things like your business is to craft stories, and if you can tie their history, even if it is elsewhere, to help improve the story that you're telling, then you obviously should do it. It benefits everybody, including the fans. So I thought that was cool. The only thing that was off to me was like, and I don't know, this could have been because I'm trying to come out of the induced coma that was from Raven and A1. So I'm trying to wake back up for this match. And it's weird because this is a little Easter egg note for anybody. I think Road Dogg was my first original favorite wrestler, like all time. Like
really?
as for like maybe like 6 months when I was like 9 years old. Road Dogg was just like the coolest thing in the world. It quickly went from that to Rey Mysterio, but I remember like Road Dogg initially. My first ever AOL email was Road Dogg. Back in like 1990.
I get it, because as a kid, I liked Road Dogg too. He had a very unique look, and like the New Age Outlaws were super over, so it was a natural.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. And then of course, I'm my favorite era of wrestling is the tag wrestling that took place between the Hardys, the Dudleys, and Edge and Christian.
Same here.
That is like peak pro wrestling for me as a kid, because that's when I was like super into the car crash TLC style matches, and I loved them, and I didn't really pay attention to like all this extra stuff that actually makes pro wrestling really good. So with all of that, I was like, damn, this match should really like tickle my like nostalgia and get me into it, and I just did it. I could not. I don't know. I could not feel more I mean, I was more interested in this than the previous two matches that took place, but I don't know, man. And I just found myself looking there. I was like, you know, at this time period, Road Dogg could still rock cornrows. Like, he could still be rocking cornrows in 2006.
Could he?
And I think he could have. I don't know.
If he had the hair, maybe. Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, he looked like he had the hairline. He just wasn't growing it. I mean, I didn't really recall if his hair was thinning. It looked like he still had his hairline. I don't know. But it was all right. You know what I mean? Like,
it was for what it was supposed to be. I think it kind of hit what they sought out to do. I will say though, like, obviously Attitude Era undertones throughout this entire match, and that fall. So Rhodey, or BG James, Road Dogg, whatever you want to call him, he still tries to ride the momentum of the New Age Outlaws with the promo in the beginning. Like, it's the same
promo
beat.
that never changed.
It fell so flat though in this particular, like, nobody cared about it, and because it's just like he has to. He can't say they're not the New Age Outlaws, so they got to change little terms here and there, and it just doesn't roll off the tongue, and it's like awkward. So, and nobody, I don't think really, because I think this match is a filler match. Like, this is a match of two teams who aren't doing anything, so let's make them have a match together. They're both baby faces. Like, who do we boo? Who do we cheer? So it's a filler match, but it's like, okay, it's fun. It's like two Attitude Era teams. You know, they're having a fun little match. Most of it is lighthearted, I would say. They do. They all do their drop kicks, which is like, because Kip James, Billy Gunn, he can do a drop kick. He's always been able to do a drop kick. He probably still could. But none of the other people in the match, Devon, Bubba, Road Dogg.
He did. Has Billy Gunn been able to do steroids for like 30 years, and he's just like the one guy no one calls on it? Like, he's oddly never been not jacked, like, ever in his whole career, including now. He's arguably in the best shape of his whole life. Is he just secretly, like, everyone giving him a pass?
Yeah, it's like
eat like horse meat or something. I don't know what the fuck's going on.
How Snoop Dogg can just smoke weed wherever he is.
Yeah,
if he's in a hospital, if he's in
you just get a pass for it. Yeah,
he's that guy. You know what's a fact that I just learned?
Like Snoop Dogg pays a joint roller. Billy Gunn pays the guy for injections.
his ass is like a pincushion at this point. But
oh my God. I'm sorry, everybody.
No, but I was gonna say a crazy fact that I learned the other day is that Kip James is 2 years older than The Undertaker, which is insane when you look at The Undertaker. I guess
Road Dogg is older than The Undertaker?
Kip James is. Billy Gunn is. Billy Gunn.
Billy Gunn's
in this match, yeah.
Shit.
It's the James gang, don't you know? You're not down with the James gang?
No, dude, I didn't even hear that fucking tag name. I just
it was just Billy Gunn and
New Age Outlaws.
I don't blame
I didn't even pay attention. I will say this. I did see a bit of stuff that I've looked back. Road Dogg, from the stuff that I saw, he had actually a really good tag team with R-Truth.
Yes, the
Rowdy
Three Live
Boys, or
Crew,
whatever they were called.
or whatever they
Yeah.
were in WWF, and then they came to TNA and they were a team. Because Truth's here in TNA too. I don't think he has a match on the show, but
I think I saw like at some point a segment that had him, but
possibly, yeah.
possibly.
But yeah, kind of just like it's, you know, they're trading drop kicks. Road Dogg does a drop kick on Bubba. Bubba's like, well, you could do a drop kick, and then Bubba does his own drop kick, which is awful. I think Devon probably does one. You know, Bubba does his drop kick, and he does like the AJ Styles pose, which I thought was funny.
Shit, I missed that. Damn it. Gotta go back.
You got a lot to go back. The intro package, the Larry Zbyszko stuff. At one point, I think it's Bubba and Road Dogg. They like punch each other at the same time and knock each other out. So it's like slapstick shit until the end, where because remember the Dudleys won their first titles in WWE with
a
the
lead
steel
pipe.
pipe.
Yeah.
We got Road Dogg getting his receipt, pulls out a lead pipe, hits Devon with it, and that gives the James Gang the win. So
I was thinking I don't know what, but like Bubba Ray has always just looked like it's like he can never, I don't know how to articulate it. The look on Bubba Ray's face, like he always has got the same angry like expression. I've noticed like throughout his whole career, he's got just one expression for like anger and betrayal. And I don't know. I was like, dude, this dude never loses a match. Like even no matter what, at the end of the match, he's always like just eyeing like his opponents down. Like you didn't beat us. Like I don't know how to articulate it, but
I get what
it's
you mean
weird.
though. Yeah.
Yeah. Like he somehow manages at the end of the day, at the end of the match, Bubba Ray knows how to divert the attention to him. Which this more facilitated it because it was his partner hit with the lead pipe, not him.
Right.
And you know, so obviously the person who feels the most emotion out of this is gonna be him being betrayed. But nonetheless, I don't know. I was like, that's the same Bubba that we've had for 20 plus years. So,
Yeah.
with the exception of the stuttering Bubba years that we had.
Well, that was his peak. Bubba.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
the best. But yeah, after like, because the James Gang, they kind of fade away. They do the whole VKM thing, which I don't know if you're familiar with, the Voodoo Kin Mafia.
I've heard. I heard the name. Yeah, the Voodoo Kin Mafia. And that was once again. Who was that? Was that the New Age?
Yes. Yeah, that was their
That was
new
them?
name. Yeah, and I guess they turned heel, and VKM, which is the initials of Vince Kennedy
McMahon. Yeah.
So it was an anti WWE faction. So it never like culminated into a match on TV. It was just them cutting promos like, oh, we're gonna, because I think this kind of coincided with DX reuniting on WWE. So they're like, oh, we're gonna invade and be a part of it, and of course it never did. So it was stupid. But otherwise,
I want to say
really,
I've heard bits and pieces of that time period.
yeah. And then, you know, Kip James, Billy Gunn would do various things. I think at one point he was the manager for the Beautiful People, which is a women's tag team. And but yeah, none too much for them. But the Dudleys are constant focal points for several years after this. So
Billy Gunn makes a good third man, though. I gotta say that.
I guess
he does
so,
make
yeah.
a good third man. He's a good-looking guy, and he's like a giant of a human being too.
I mean, I'd scissor him. So didn't he get his dick
I don't
chopped
think-
off on Rampage or something? What happened there?
I don't think you'd have a choice. No, what did happen to him? Oh no, it looked like he got fingernails plucked.
Oh,
He was being held hostage. Like I don't know why, but all I could think about was the Edge and Christian show when they would interrogate people.
Yes.
But theirs was like
Yeah.
really silly. But they'd interrogate people to get like really in their face, and they'd just be rocking the light bulb back and forth. But that's the classic like kidnapped interrogation aesthetic. Anyways, dark room, singular light bulb, someone strapped to a chair. Yeah, and Swerve. It's implied that Swerve was like plucking his fingernails.
right. Can't scissor
yeah.
anymore, I guess.
I don't know how they're gonna follow that up though. That's a weird. I mean, I guess you just like tape the fingers and just say that they're
Yeah,
jacked up.
maybe
You got to follow up with. I mean, you have to show it. You know what I mean?
put
Otherwise,
actual scissors on his fingers.
No.
Scissor
I'm
hands?
just saying, like you did an angle where you maimed somebody. So if they come out like 2 weeks later and there's no maiming, there's no like injury to be seen, like what did you do?
It's on Rampage, though. You know, it's not like anybody's paying attention. But
It's true. No, you're not lying. You're not lying.
Maybe they could have used a 16-man gauntlet match. But speaking of which,
what the hell was this?
let me just run down the names in this match real quick. We got Petey Williams, Jay Lethal, Minoru, Black Tiger, Chris Sabin, Alex Shelley, Jushin Thunder Liger, Sanjay Dutt, Puma, Johnny Devine, Tyson Dukes, Hiroki Goto, Eric Young, Shocker, Incognito, and Magno. Thoughts?
So I'm kind of offended that you skipped over the legendary Abyss and James Mitchell promo, and also the debut of former Diva Search winner Christy Hemming. Okay,
I was gonna get to Christy Hemming. I was gonna get to her.
Okay. No, but as far as the roster you laid out, the one person that really stuck out to me, believe it or not, besides Jay Lethal, was Incognito.
Dude, he was impressive as hell.
I've seen that fool before. Yeah. Turns out that's Sin Cara, man.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's Hunico.
Right, of course.
Hunico's Sin Cara. Yeah, man. I was like, I know I've seen. At first, I thought it may have been Loki, because he had like a really pronounced jaw, like Loki does. Mm-hmm. And so I just did a quick Google search, and it turned out it was Sin Cara.
It's interesting because I thought, because he did the suicide dive in this match, which is very reminiscent of I don't know if you've watched Lucha Underground, but Santa.
I saw like half of, if not the majority of the first season.
Right. So King Cuerno, if you're familiar with him, aka Santos Escobar, he does this suicide dive that's like crazy. It's like the best way. Is he like spear? It's like a trident. Just it's the way it's like so straight and fast. And Incognito did that. So I was like, is this Santos Escobar? But I guess it wasn't. And he does this like crazy, like he's in the ring. He just leaps to the top rope, not the turnbuckle, just at the middle of the rope, and just does a lion salt off the top rope. So I was like, man, I didn't know who this guy was, but he's impressive. And he was probably the one that stuck out to me among everything.
What got to me was you have such a special match, and it confused me going into it with fresh eyes, because I hear gauntlet match. So I'm thinking WWE gauntlet match. You wait till someone's pinned, somebody else comes. But it turned out it was essentially a Royal Rumble, but the winner is a pinfall, decided with a pinfall, I guess. Unless it was like you could have done either, and they just chose to finish with. I don't know. Other than that, dude, it felt like it should have been really, really good, but I don't know. It felt rushed to me. It felt like, because for one, you don't need a guy to count down over the speakers. You don't need this fool counting us down. Yes. Two, I get that you can't, they were probably on time constraints, so not everybody can get like a full entrance. But when they just sprint to the ring at full speed, I gave up trying to type down everyone's names after I got past Mini Steiner. Because I didn't even catch his name. And at that point, I just gave up.
Mini Steiner.
Yeah, there was a guy with like blonde hair in there. I don't know if he was the guy that who was the one that in Steiner Math was dressed up.
Like Petey Williams.
Version. That was Petey Williams.
Yeah, you're saying there was another. Was it Eric Young? Maybe
there was another guy in there, blonde, who looked like a miniature Scott Steiner.
Eric Young had blonde hair. He was wearing the long red tights.
That may have
been. Who else
him.
It would be? Tyson Dukes. He's kind of a lanky guy, though.
No, Tyson Dukes was like the really tall, goofy-looking guy.
Yes.
He ended up eliminating Jushin.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, it wasn't him.
Alex Shelley, maybe. He had like the half blonde hair.
Maybe. I don't know. But it was like right where I lost track of the names because of how fast they were entering. I was like, shit, I can't keep up with this anymore.
Yeah.
It felt like a match that should have been better, but
lots of talent.
There was
just like you said, it was rushed.
It was a rushed match. Yeah, I didn't have time to like see any like big moves occur and big moments take place like you traditionally get in like a Rumble style match. It was cool though seeing early Jay Lethal. Although Jay Lethal's been around so long, he could have been a 10-year veteran at this point.
He's the youngest person on the roster at this point. I think he's like 20 years old here.
Really? Good God, dude.
Yeah, which is crazy.
How long has Jay Lethal been doing this?
I mean, so I've been watching, I cover old school Ring of Honor, And I'm at the point now where he just turned 18, so he can start wrestling now, which is like 2002, 2003, whatever it is. So
I didn't. Yeah, it's weird to hear like Jay Lethal as like a young guy.
Yeah, he's
like
still
to see
going,
him
man.
as like a young guy in a promotion.
But another problem with this, other than it's 16 guys. You have to spread the wealth divided by 16, so everybody only gets a few seconds to shine here. The World X Cup in general, like, what are the stakes? You get a trophy.
Yeah,
it's like
I was wondering that too,
I had a tough time carrying like who won the title or the trophy.
Well, not to mention it gets tied into everybody that was from Japan was like a junior heavyweight people, and then so I'm assuming this was all like essentially this was nothing but cruiserweights. And that's kind of what it appeared. There was no like bigger wrestlers in this. And that's part of what Kevin Nash's problem was too, is apparently you're not allowed to just be small. So yeah, no, it was hard. It was like in one hand, they were describing this tournament. Like they were trying to get over this tournament and the story and the points. And here's the drama. Cause at the end, Petey Williams won. And by the way, I was wondering why I didn't get to see a Canadian Destroyer in the opening match. And it turns out it was because they were saving it for the finish of this match. So that was pretty cool. So they trying to, and there's the drama of now they're tied up. Canada and America tied up with points. And so it's like in one hand, they're trying to make us care. And then in the next second, like Kevin Nash came out and just was like, yeah, like small people suck. And it was weird hearing essentially the term mid years before it was popularized, although he was saying mediocre, but it's the same context. And he's like a mediocre big guy can still smash the runner up of this tournament and stuff. And it was weird. It was like they actively tried to make me care and not care at the same time about this shit.
Yeah. And also like Team Mexico and Team Japan, I feel like most of the guys were wearing masks. So they kind of was like, who's Mexico? Who's Japan? So that was another aspect I didn't really, that kind of took me out of it as well. But yeah, this really all just set up the Nash segment, which like you said, he gets in there because the final two were Petey Williams and Puma of Team Mexico. Petey wins with the Canadian Destroyer. So Puma's out cold. Then Kevin Nash comes in. I can't remember if he takes out Petey Williams or not, but he definitely gets in there and gives the jackknife to Puma and picks him up and gives him a big boot. And Nash is basically here to destroy the X Division. So it was he's had a few promos on Impact leading up to this show where he's like, okay, TNA, their whole, the differentiating thing about TNA, the thing that makes them stick out is the X Division. So if I destroy the X Division, that means that I'm the thing that sticks out in TNA, that I'll get paid more. So that's like the whole thing. And that's his whole motivation here.
And there's something that really was confusing me about this, but I'll get into it after the next match. And I'll explain like why one thing makes sense and the other one didn't. Okay.
Well, before that, we got to talk about Christy Hemme a little bit. I forgot to,
former Playboy model Christy Hemme
coming out here, newly signed to TNA, but they don't really have a women's division here. So she's here to stroke the trophy that's ringside. Literally, it's this huge ass trophy. She's working it like a stripper pole, and that's her contribution. So
it's, oh man, dude, women were so treated so weirdly. It's so funny watching like wrestling trying to figure out where its value in female talent was in time periods, and then also just moment to moment. You know what I mean? Like one moment you have like wrestlers like China, like being able to scrap with men and like have this legendary run, and then in the next moment, you've got like Vicky Guerrero in a hog pen match. It's just so weird to see like exactly how women were used. And it's really obvious. It's not like it's a surprise to anybody. It really just facilitated from moment for moment. Are you eye candy or what, I mean, hell, that the whole diva search essentially was that just scoured models like to hire for WWE during that time period.
It's funny though. Christy Hemme was in a WrestleMania women's title match like a year before this, which is funny to think about because like that's like you said, it just fluctuates so quickly in this time period.
I really don't remember anything about Christy Hemme outside of her diva search stuff because I was watching that live. Yeah,
she was a valet for I think the Road Warriors thing with Animal and Heidenreich. I don't know why I remember that, but I do. But yeah, it is what it is. I don't think she does much. I think she becomes like a ring announcer at some point, but I don't think she does much in TNA. But after that, we got a tag team match. The team of Jeff Jarrett and Scott Steiner versus the team of Sting and Samoa Joe. It's an interesting one here. So again, the whole story here is Jarrett versus Sting. It culminates at Bound for Glory in October, but this is kind of like a side quest of sorts for whatever the hell. The build to this was weird because you have Jarrett and Scott Steiner who are a team, and they're like, "Hey, Sting, go find a partner. Can be anybody." So they're doing this whole like in the build up on Impact. Sting is like, I guess Sting, he has like two guys that Jarrett can choose from, but they're each like in separate tunnels. And Sting's like, Jarrett, you can pick which tunnel represents my partner. And then Jarrett's like, nah, I'm not going to pick it. I'm going to do it on my terms or whatever the hell. And then so Sting brings a one Impact.
It's a great impression.
It's like, who does he have? It's Buff Bagwell's in one tunnel and Lex Luger is in the other tunnel.
Jesus Christ.
But Jarrett didn't pick any, so none of them are actually his partner. And they do it the following week, but this time it's just one person, and it's Rick Steiner this time. But Jarrett still didn't pick him, so he's not going to be his partner. So it's just like we're just trying to get names on Impact, I guess is the purpose of this. But in addition to that, this is Samoa Joe's first like foray and non-X Division stuff because he came in to the X Division, won the title, had the whole thing with AJ and Daniels. He's the X Division champion here at this point. I don't even know if he came out with the belt or not.
He's walking around with the title at the end of the match.
He did. Okay. But that's another thing. And I kind of mentioned this earlier. I think that contributed to the lackluster nature of this show is that there was not an X Division title match because Joe is tied up in this. But I thought the match was fine. It didn't really grip me. I don't know. What'd you think? Did you?
Yeah, it's so weird to me because this was like the weirdest match to me because 75% of this match is made up of wrestlers that I could never get interested in. I could never get interested in Scott Steiner, Jeff Jarrett, or even, I hate to say it, even Sting.
I'm with you.
I like AEW Sting, but you're always going to win me over if you jump off tall things. I know.
He did that a little bit in this match too. He's flying all over the place.
Yeah, he did that a little bit here too. And Sting, I totally get the appeal of Sting. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like the guy sucked by no means. There's a reason why he's as legendary as he is just like, he kind of represents a generation that I always looked at like my dad's generation. So I was always hard to get into.
I think you had to be 80s. There.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, it's the same thing if I try to show like kids like half my age, music I listen to and pop culture from like when I was a teenager, they're just going to naturally be more resistant. They weren't there to experience it. So it's just, it's just a little bit different. But then you got Samoa Joe, and that was the hook for me. I love fucking Samoa Joe, no matter what version I'm getting. And then the match got really good. Sting fired up. I thought the chemistry was great. The crowd woke up.
Yes.
That's what I noticed was like the crowd finally woke up from this coma they had been in since the tag match earlier in the night, which if that's a sign for anything is TNA knew how to do good tag matches.
They did.
It was a fun match. I didn't feel any stakes to it, but it was a lot of fun to watch. Like it was, I think, my favorite match actually of the evening.
That's fair. One. Yeah. No, I mean, because I'm Samoa Joe's top 3 for me. So seeing him in his physical peak here is always going to be a treat. Especially him, because like I said, this is kind of his first main event match with like main event guys. So seeing him hit like Jarrett with the Uranagis and throwing out belly to belly suplexes to Scott Steiner, and Steiner was throwing them back too. So it was fun. There was fun interactions within this match, and
getting to see him on his rise to the main event. You know what I mean? Like right there as he was breaking through. That's pretty gnarly.
No, it was super. Like, he's super over. I mean, everybody loved Joe. He was arguably the hottest, act going in TNA at this point.
Once again, another talent. It's crazy to see that nobody saw value in this man, till like the late teens. But by the time he made it over to WWE, it's just crazy. Once again, another guy that went without being signed to WWE for so long.
That was that look, man. You needed those. You needed abs to be in WWE. You needed the traps.
That's true. Yeah, you needed that. That's the face though. Like Samoa Joe is just one of the most captivating,
dude.
Looking people.
He's legitimate. He's like a genuine. Even when he speaks, his promos, I think he's one of the best talkers in wrestling as well. On top of his wrestling, everything
there's
about
a reason
him
why he was put on commentary.
While
he was injured, there's a reason. Yeah, he's
fucking great at that too.
Yeah, man. No, the guy's excellent. Super talented.
So ultimately, this match, the finish comes when Jarrett, he hits Joe with a low blow, gives him the stroke, which is like a skull-crushing finale type move, but only gets a 2 count. So Jarrett goes to the top rope, or pulls Joe up to the second rope to try to hit the stroke off the second rope, but Joe fights out of it. He leaps off the second rope, rolls, hits him with a sick enziguri, and then a muscle buster for the win, which I wasn't expecting Joe to just pin him in the middle of the ring. Although I guess it's important to say that Joe is still undefeated at this point. So I guess he wasn't going to lose this match either. So yeah, Joe gets the win. Him and Sting do. And then what'd you think of the aftermath here of this match?
So this is the part that really bugged the piss out of me.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I get the trope that heels can be doing dastardly things in the ring. And you there's always that wrestling trope, like why doesn't anybody come out? Like wrestlers just don't have friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the whole thing of their Jarrett and Steiner are gonna beat down Sting, and Joe at this point, I guess, turns heel by just not caring, and he walks off. Right. And I was like, cool, we're getting to see this cold-hearted Joe. That's cool. And then the X Division comes out. Apparently the X Division loves Sting. And this is the part that really fucked me up, man. Because they come out to save Sting when before this match, you have the one guy who's calling out the entire division in Kevin Nash. And he says, I'm here to destroy all of you people. And you guys don't think that it calls to come out and beat down Kevin Nash, yet you're going to come out. And I mean, I get Sting's a legend and respect your legends and those who come before you. Yeah. It was just like a weird trope to me that okay, you're willing to send the division out to save Sting, but you're not willing to send them out to protect themselves against Kevin Nash. And like I said, I get it. I get that you have to, this is a story that with the Kevin Nash shit, it's just picking up and just rolling. But it was just awkward to see them run out for one and not the other.
So I see what you're saying. I think, there's 2 things. One, the Nash stuff earlier happened immediately following the match where virtually the entire X Division was a part of. So maybe they're tuckered out. Maybe they're getting some ice on their tummies and their backs, and they can't run out immediately. And secondly, I don't think anybody gives a fuck about Puma, that he got beat up. So fuck Puma, I guess. And but yeah, I see what you're saying, though. It makes sense. But yeah, so this tag match, they were building tension between Samoa Joe and Sting. Commentary was, they were they got dressed in separate dressing rooms. How are they going to get along? But I didn't feel like that translated in the match or anything on screen that there was hostility.
I saw more friction between Steiner and Jarrett.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I thought I saw more animosity between them.
Yeah, and Samoa Joe has been, he's a heel here, essentially. He has been since he debuted. So maybe that's just it's a heel and a babyface team, and how are they going to get along kind of thing. It's implied, but
I love that the crowd's encouraging Joe to save Sting. And then Sting gets essentially his character's killed. He gets blasted with the guitar, right? That's the kill shot. You know what I mean? And then Joe motions like he might turn around, and the crowd's like, "Yeah, go save him." It's like, dude, it's too late. Like, it's like watching it's like watching Batman and Martha get gunned down in the alleyway, and then cheering the police on to go stop the guy. It's like, no, dude, it's too late at this point. The thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like the crowd even baiting that Joe might now go down there. It was just so silly.
He's already dead.
It's already dead. Yeah, like the crowd should have started booing. The commentary should have at that point been like, "Joe, you turn your back, you dastardly bastard," or something. But instead, it's like, "Yeah, Joe, go save him now." Like, no, like,
yeah,
it's too late.
It was interesting.
And the X Division finally came through and ran him off. What was the X Division's relation with Sting, anyways? By the way, I missed. What was the reason they went out at that point?
They like Sting, I guess. He's a legend.
I don't know. It's just a locker room full of Darby Allins.
Yeah. It was just the babyface tunnel, though. It's very important.
Sting notoriously gets along with undersized baby faces on up and coming baby faces on the roster.
It's also interesting because Samoa Joe is kind of like anti-X Division. Like, he doesn't. There's like a code that you have to shake hands and all that, and Samoa Joe never does that. Although he did in this match, he shook Sting's hand after the match, but then didn't save him after with the beatdown. So I'm curious, because I don't really know what he does like for the rest of this year. I know he eventually faces Kurt Angle when he gets there, but I'm not really sure what he does in between now and then. So I don't know. Maybe it'll all make sense on Impact. We got to tune in this Saturday at 11 p.m. to find out. So, but. That brings us to the main events. The NWA World Heavyweight title is on the line here. It's not a TLC match. It's a full Metal Mayhem match. The champion, Christian Cage, versus Abyss with James Mitchell. And you touched on the promo segment earlier. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Oh my God, dude, how silly.
What are you talking about?
I love that. I mean, pro wrestling is by all definition a very, very silly universe and medium. But nowadays you can tell that nowadays, for the most part, it's way more grounded, with the exception of a few characters like the Bray Wyatts and stuff. But even then, I feel like it's more grounded. I forgot just how zany wrestling companies would lean into certain things. I'm thinking, of course, Undertaker was always really zany, although Undertaker was pretty grounded. The Boogeyman was a level of zany that was really, really out there. Burchell ripping off of Pirates of the Caribbean, super, super zany.
Yep. And
then this was just a stark reminder of just how over the top they would get. And it's crazy too, because the contrast, if you ran that promo with Abyss and James Mitchell right next to the promo they ran right before the match, the promo they ran before the match was way more grounded and gritty. You know what I mean? It didn't have the same tone, because that tone Abyss and James Mitchell had was just so out there and silly, silly monster. We're filming this on Halloween, and it very much felt like in lines with how silly the Monster Mash song is. It really did, man. It was very comical to me. Like, I found myself laughing out loud watching it, and I loved it. I loved every second of it. And it's also weird that WWE's had Abyss on their roster now for years, and outside of that segment where he played AJ Styles' lawyer,
his statistician or something.
Statistician. They haven't found any use for him, and
I was hoping that would be more of a thing. Him and AJ.
I think everybody was like, that was a fantastic segment.
He nailed it. It's like, why didn't they use him for anything?
For anything. I don't know. Maybe that tells me that has to be either his own doing, or that's Vince McMahon and his people thinking that he just doesn't fit the look for television. Doesn't think he looks appropriate for TV.
Yeah.
But I mean, the dude's the Abyss, because my wife asked about him. She was like, "Oh, Kane went to TNA."
Yeah.
I was like, "No, that's Abyss. He's kind of like a mix between Kane and Mick Foley."
Right.
I was like, if you merge those two and then put them in like a low budget wrestling company, you get Abyss.
Abyss was a monster here, man. This is again like a common thread throughout this. It's a lot of people's physical peaks, I think, and Abyss is one of those guys because he's just so. He has that look, man, and the chain around his neck with James Mitchell. Like I thought that act, like them together, was so good. And that the pyro and like you said, the Kane and McFoley undertones to it all, and the build up to this match specifically. So Christian is a fairly new champion. Abyss, #1 contender. The build up to this, which you may have caught in the video package. Abyss goes to Christian's house, beats him up all throughout his house, throws him in his pool and tries to drown him, but he can't win the title from a dead man, according to James Mitchell. So he doesn't actually kill him, but he ruffles his feathers a little bit. And that's and then they had a match at Lockdown, so a cage match, where Christian won, but Abyss attacked him after and hung him with the chain and took his title, basically, which is, we're seeing it now with Jade Cargill and Nyla Rose. He has the possession of the title, and that's 9/10 of the law, so he's 90% champion, I guess, is the deal. So that leads us to this Full Metal Mayhem match. So it's TLC, it's tables, ladders, chairs, and chains is how this is built up.
It was chairs, ladders, and chains. The tables. It was.
Oh yeah,
it wasn't really much for tables.
Well, there's a few little things here. So we got so it's a ladder match rules, obviously. So you have to climb the ladder to get the belts, and this match was okay. It was like, like when you watch a TV show and you get to the finale, and it's like, okay, like it makes sense, but I expected more. Like Breaking Bad to me was kind of like that. It was like, everything makes sense. I'm fine with it, but I expected something more epic. And that was kind of what this was.
Given the video package, you were led to believe that this was going to be like a huge, bloody, violent blow-off.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, you were given kind of like a hardcore style match that's more or less on par with what you get in PG era WWE. There wasn't much. I mean, maybe I was just I was struggling to pay attention during the whole match. Or I know I stepped out of the room a couple times, actually, because I was getting ready to do the show with you at this point. I wanted to find out what I was going to wear for you. But it felt very like I don't want to say like mundane, but it didn't, nothing to me like made me like wince. Like I was, given the video package, I was like, dude, there's going to be something's going to happen in this match where I'm going to be struggling to look because it's going to be so violent. And I guess that was like the James Mitchell thumbtack spot. But even then, he went into the thumbtacks with a shirt on, which kind of nullifies the whole appeal of seeing thumbtacks embedded in flesh is when you see them embedded in cloth. I mean, granted, I bet it still hurt.
It's probably not nice, but
yeah, but it takes away
the
from
visual
that
isn't there. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say a couple things that stood out to me. It stood out to me that it was weird not hearing a crowd say we want tables every 30 seconds.
Right.
But then after I had that thought, I was like, I don't even hear the crowd at all, actually. Like this crowd did not seem to be coming alive for the match. I think even though this is a world title and traditionally world titles should finish the show, the crowd were much hotter for the tag match that preceded the main event. Also, by the way, Christian was a babyface in this.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up. So this is Christian. He turns heel eventually. I think it's fairly soon after this. And I'm wondering if that plays a part into this. Maybe Christian just isn't a good babyface.
To me, the match struck me like two heels. Like Christian Christian has just never come across like a really big baby face.
He's a natural heel. That's when his best work is
He's
done.
a natural heel. Like you need a very sympathetic thing to happen to him to find yourself.
Well, he got drowned in his pool, Kai Guy.
Yeah, but even then, like it's like
what else do you
maybe had Edge almost drowned, then I might be cheering for Christian.
Right. Okay. I see what you're saying.
I don't know. It was weird, man. It was a weird main event. I was I was expecting something more violent.
Do you think, because us watching this in 2022, do you think we're just so desensitized to ladder matches now, and maybe watching this in hindsight takes away from it?
Could be, yeah, because this match is taking place not too long after TLC had originally formed. Because what TLC's first official match was like 2001, I want to say.
SummerSlam 2000, I believe, was the first one.
SummerSlam 2000. Okay, so
good
in
6
hindsight,
years.
you're only about 6 years,
Which is nothing in the grand scheme of
which
things.
really isn't that long away. So I imagine those style of matches are still very impactful because we're not oversaturated at that point too, by the way, with WWE's annual TLC event, Extreme Rules event. TLC and Extreme Rules, I guess.
Yeah, because after
Hell in Cell to a lesser degree.
Like 2002, they were doing a lot of gimmick match stuff, but I feel like after that, for a few years, they kind of took a break from it, at least to an extent. I guess ladder matches at least in that element, because the Hardy Boys aren't really there, and the Dudleys leave, and all that stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of elements at play as to why this probably didn't live up to the hype, maybe. But I thought it was fine for what it was.
Yeah, I think I've always also struggled to picture Christian as a main event guy.
He needs to be that chicken shit. He needs to be that slimy guy that like cheats to win.
Yeah, kind of like what was that feud he had with Randy Orton, like the one more match Christian that I've heard about.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of feels more like ideal for him.
Well, eventually, here in TNA, he builds a faction. I think like AJ Styles and Tyson Tomko are his like bodyguards or like at least not his like henchmen of sorts. And then he has some good programs with like Samoa Joe and I think Kurt Angle as well. So he does some good stuff in TNA when he's a heel. But yeah, I think this experiment with babyface Christian Cage on top isn't really hitting. But I can't blame him for trying because he's a big name at this point because he came off of WWE pretty hot. Like he was in the main events with John Cena and stuff like that. So
when was this in relation to when Edge retired?
That's like 5 years after this, I think.
That's what I thought. Okay, yeah, because Christian went to and from TNA and WWE a couple times, right? He went to TNA, then back to WWE, and then back to TNA.
So I think it was only once, but he did come back. There was like that weird situation where they like traded for a night. Like Christian appeared for one night so that Ric Flair could be at the Hall of Fame ceremony because Ric Flair was in TNA and Christian was in WWE. But no, Christian was here until he went back to WWE, and I don't think he ever went back full time. No.
Okay, because I thought he went back after he returned to WWE. I thought there was but like I said, this is kind of during this period of time where I wasn't watching wrestling. I was watching UFC and I didn't have cable, so I didn't get to watch wrestling until probably it was essentially like 2004, 2005, and then it went all the way to when John Cena and The Rock faced off in Mania, whatever year that was.
Oh wow, yeah.
And that's a period of wrestling that I didn't get to watch live.
Right. There's some good stuff in there, but yeah, it's not that great, I guess. But but as far as this match goes, like you said, tacks come into play. James Mitchell gets a Uranagi onto the tacks, which is a fun spot. You got Christian hanging Abyss with the chain. This all felt like it was tying. It was like Christian's revenge. Like Christian hangs Abyss with the chain, just like he did to him at Lockdown. You have Abyss there's a table set up. Abyss is like leaning on the table, and Christian gives him a concerto on the table.
That was actually a really cool spot. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and then Christian goes to the top of the ladder that's set up next to the table because he's just been knocked out, or Abyss has been knocked out by that concerto, and gets laid on the table. Christian hits a frog splash off the top of the ladder, through the table, through Abyss, and then Christian gets back up, climbs the ladder, grabs the belt. So Abyss getting his comeuppance and James Mitchell. Christian retains, and solid match, like I said, but I feel like it could have. I don't know if you've seen their Lockdown match. Their Lockdown match the month previous to this felt more intense. I almost feel like if you would have switched those two, it would have made more sense, but okay, it is what it is. But yeah, any other thoughts on that?
No, know, man. I mean, it was cool walking down and taking a moment to see TNA, because I never actively like dislikes. I never really actively dislike like a wrestling company or a period. It's just sometimes like it's just stuff I haven't watched and I never really bothered myself to watch, and I have to find a reason to go back and see it. And that was, obviously what you offered me. And it was cool peeking into that time period. Like I said, what really was of noteworthy to me is like the young AJ Styles, and then that tag match with Joe and Sting and Jarrett and Steiner. I mean, I don't know if I've ever been so invested in a match featuring Jeff Jarrett and Scott Steiner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was cool to find appreciation in that. But overall, I was like, it wasn't actively bad, but it was like, it wasn't the best show.
Yeah, and I said this.
In my opinion.
I said this in our group chat that this show was uncharacteristically mid. Like most of this year is really good, but this show is a like you said, not a miss, but it was a single. It was a dribbler to the outfield. Nothing actively. Well, no, there was some bad on this show, but there was some good too.
Yeah, like I said, I think starting it and finishing it with those tag matches probably would have been good, because to me that was like where the crowd peaked. You know what I mean? But I get, obviously it's the main event picture, and then given the story that you're trying to tell with Christian and Abyss, I mean, it's hard. You can't make that call to make those guys go on as runner-ups to the main event. You have to put that story on at the end.
Yeah.
It's just like I said, like you said, there's like a lot of factors that maybe make it not stand out as much as it honestly should have.
Yeah. They're still figuring things out, TNA, but there's still some good stuff. And this show might have been mid, but there's some other shows in this year that really make you want to smack yourself raw. But speaking of which, the Smacked Raw podcast. Kyle, thank you once again for joining me, talking about some TNA. Where can everybody find you, listen to the Smacked Raw podcast and all that stuff?
Yeah, so Smacked Raw is a more or less a channel of multiple podcasts nowadays. So myself and RN, we host the Rewind, where we take a look at our favorite things that are going on both in the ring and outside of the ring over the latest week. So we'll talk about some of our favorite storylines. Essentially, me and him just gush over anything MJF in the Bloodline every week. Right. But then we also like to talk about like some of the backstage news and rumors as well. And it's very much opinion based. A much more professionally put together show that you'll find on our channel is Botch Spots and Chair Shots with Will Gray. He does a lot of interviews, and he also does take a look back at older wrestling, along with exclusive to our audio platform side of things. The Heel Truth, starring Ted the Hillbilly Heel, who oddly started his show on episode 100. You have to ask him. He calls himself a heel, but he's actually like the nicest person out of all of us. So you can find us on Twitch, twitch.tv/SmackedRaw. You can find us over on youtube.com/SmackedRaw podcast. And then the audio version is pretty much found anywhere you can find your podcasts. We're Smacked Raw, a pro wrestling podcast. You should be able to find us on Apple and Spotify, which I think are the two biggest platforms most people use. But yeah, dude, check us out. We have a lot of fun. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, I've had, obviously you, I've had RN, I've had Will, I've had Ted, bunch of good blokes over there. I keep subjecting myself to you guys for whatever reason, but yeah. Once again, thank you to Kyle Tyson from the Smacked Raw podcast for joining me on this lovely walk down memory lane of tits and ass wrestling 2006. Always a good time talking about TNA. Always a good time talking about any kind of wrestling with White Kyle. So go check out the Smacked Raw podcast. Live on Twitch, on YouTube, all audio platforms. You know the deal. You know how to find things. All of his Twitters and his Instagrams and all the other social stuff in the description below. Mine is there as well, apronbump.com for all my full episodes. Give the video a like, give a video a like. Those are the only three things I need from you. Yeah. I think that's about all Daddy has for you today. should I be wearing? So I thought about wearing my wedding ring on this episode, because I will be married by the time this comes out, but I'm not as of recording this, so I don't want to call my shot. You know, feel like that's bad luck. I mean, what if I just pull a fucking Ross and call her Rachel instead of her actual name? So that would be a bummer. You know, what if she falls into a giant sinkhole and never comes back? You know, there's so many things that could happen between now and then. So yeah, good thing I didn't, right? Are you with me? I'm free. I'll say with me. Hallelujah. I'm free. Are you still here? Thanks for listening. Go away now. I'm hard.
Yeah.
And the hardest, talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing I guess. Let's get it started. It's the hardest, talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing I guess.